They told you to chase, to prove your worth, to beg for attention. But Machiavelli would laugh at such desperation, believed affection was currency, and only fools spent it freely. It is much safer to be feared than loved, he wrote, if one must choose. And yet, you've been taught to choose love at the cost of your dignity. This is the cruel mistake of modern romance. Chasing those who flee and ignoring those who wait. You were never taught to build power only to pursue it in others. In a world where attention is leveraged and love is performative, Machiavelli would ask, why play the peasant in someone else's kingdom? What if the coldest strategy was to never chase again? What if your silence made them kneel? This isn't about game, charm, or manipulation. This is about withholding, not pleading composure, not confusion. In the eyes of Machiavelli, love should be earned like respect, not assumed like obedience. Welcome to the other side of attraction, the side where you become the storm. You were never chasing love, you were chasing a performance from the moment you were old enough to desire. They handed you a script tattered and full of lies. Be nice, be persistent, show her you care. Wait outside her window in the rain. Text back fast, prove yourself, work for it. Wait longer, apologize more. But Machiavelli would have burned that script, because he understood something you were never allowed to know. Affection is not given in return for effort, it is granted in response to leverage, he wrote. Men in general judge more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel. You were told to feel while they were trained to watch. And every time you chased, every time you begged, every time you hoped, it was seen and judged and used. This is the kingdom of illusions, a world where you were taught that love is a currency earned by proving worth, but Machiavelli would call that subjugation. The more you try, the more you bow, and once you bow, they never look at you the same. This is not romance, this is hierarchy. In modern courtship, love is a weapon, not a gift. It's handed out by the one with perceived value and hoarded from the one who bleeds for it. You were conditioned to bleed, trained to offer yourself like a peasant outside the palace gates, hoping the queen glances your way. But to Machiavelli, that is not love, that is voluntary enslavement. You were raised in illusions, films, music, culture, all whispering the same lie, that chasing someone makes you noble, but nobility without power is just decoration on a prisoner's uniform. You must understand something brutal. They don't fall for the one who chases, they fall for the one who waits, who watches, who withholds. Because in love, as in politics, perception is power, and desperation, no matter how artfully disguised, is always visible. Every unanswered message, every double text, every good morning sent to someone who left you on read, each one chips away at your sovereignty. Machiavelli wouldn't have pitied you, he would have corrected you, because he knew a ruler never begs to be seen. And yet, most people you've met, especially in matters of the heart, have been actors in a system that rewards emotional submission. They offer just enough to keep you engaged, but not enough to feel certain it's not accidental, it's tactical. You were not rejected because you lacked love. You were dismissed because you lacked posture. They didn't see a sovereign, they saw a supplicant. Let that truth sting. Let it burn. Let it purify the naive part of you that still believes effort earns affection. Machiavelli knew effort earns results in war and work, but not in love. In love, results come from distance, mystery, and restraint. The truth is this: the one who is chaste holds the power, not because they are better, but because they are still unavailable, silent, like a monarch on a balcony, watching the crowd scream their name. That's the law here. Perceived value is built in withdrawal, not pursuit. The kingdom doesn't chase its subjects, the subjects move toward the throne. And you, if you want to leave the kingdom of illusions behind, must stop being the jester. Stop performing. Stop offering. Your attention must become selective. Your energy must become exclusive. Your presence must feel like entry to a fortress, not a hallway with open doors. This isn't about revenge. It's about recalibration. Every person who disrespected your effort was playing a different game, a game Machiavelli would have understood with perfect clarity. The game of scarcity, the game of optics, the game of power. You were in it. You just didn't know the rules until now, because the moment you stop chasing, the illusion begins to collapse. The false gods lose their thrones. The one who was always too busy now checks your profile. The one who took you for granted now studies your silence like scripture. Machiavelli believed that silence was sharper than any response, and in love, silence is not absence. It is a weapon, a test of who values your presence. So what now? Now you burn the old doctrine. Now you stop offering your crown for a glance. Now you learn to sit in silence so long that others start asking why you stopped speaking. This is your first psychological shift. Stop chasing what flees. Start valuing what remains still. Stop being the court jester. Become the monarch who watches from the throne, because in the kingdom of illusions, only the still are seen as kings. Desperation isn't loud, it's quiet. It whispers from the corners of your posture, your tone, your digital silence waiting to be broken. It breathes in the pauses between texts and bleeds out of the words you didn't need to send. It is not what you say, it's the energy behind why you say it, the fear behind the hey, the ache behind the emoji, the quiet panic that maybe, if you don't keep reminding them you exist, they'll forget you ever did. Machiavelli would call this a strategic collapse, not because you've lost the battle, but because you surrendered your position before the war began. He wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." But you've surrounded yourself with ghosts, people who ignore your effort, discard your consistency, and feed off your craving. To Machiavelli, desperation is not a flaw, it is a signal, a broadcast that tells the room, I do not believe I can win without begging. And what do predators do when they smell weakness? They circle. This is where most people lose the game, not because they lack charm, intelligence, or even beauty, but because they couldn't stop giving more than what was returned. And eventually, the equation always flips. The one who offers too much becomes the one with nothing left to give. In modern courtship, desperation is the death of attraction. It's not that they don't like you, it's that they sense they've already won you. And humans don't value what comes after conquest. We value what withholds, what remains slightly beyond reach, what forces us to rise to meet it. The more effort you give without being asked, the more you train them to see you as an option, and an option is never a priority. Machiavelli believed the wise ruler concealed his intentions, calculated his appearances, and never handed over more than necessary. He did not flood the court with kindness, he rationed it. He measured every gesture, because to give too much was to owe too much. When you flood someone with your energy, You bankrupt your value. You become predictable, accessible, and ultimately disposable. This is not a call to cruelty. It's a call to containment, to stop leaking your desire onto those who haven't earned your vulnerability. Because vulnerability without discernment is not bravery, it's exposure, and once exposed, you're no longer enigmatic, you're no longer magnetic, you're just open, easy known. Machiavelli never asked to be understood, only to be obeyed, and obedience comes from mystery, not transparency. The truth is brutal. When they know they can have you, they no longer need to want you. When the outcome is certain, the game ends, and most people only realize they were playing a game after they've already lost it. You lose the moment they stop wondering about you, when you answer too fast, when you show up uninvited, when you wait around hoping to be chosen. Desperation is emotional gravity. It pulls you downward, quietly, until one day you realize no one is looking up to find you anymore. You've lowered yourself to be loved, and love, real love, cannot be found where self-respect was sacrificed. This is the anatomy of desperation. It's not a feeling, it's a sequence. First you hope, then you chase, then you justify, then you beg, then you collapse. But there is a way back. It begins with this truth: they are not a god. They do not hold your worth. They are not the sun around which you orbit. You are the axis. You are the gravity. You are the storm. And storms don't chase. They arrive without warning, without permission. This is your psychological correction. Your need is the leash they use to lead you. Cut it. The next time you want to reach out first, don't. The next time you want to explain yourself, don't. The next time you feel ignored, disappear instead of pleading. Because here's the Machiavellian truth: silence breeds curiosity. Desperation breeds disgust. You're not losing them because you're unworthy. You're losing them because you're available too much, too often, too fast. And in a world saturated with dopamine and options, the only thing that still has power is restraint. Emotional silence is the new currency. It's not passive, it's tactical, and once you master it, you'll feel something you haven't felt in a long time: control. So let them wonder. Let them check their phone. Let them feel the absence you once filled with effort. You're not desperate, you're calculating. You no longer the one who offers, you're the one they remember. Because you didn't beg to be noticed. That's the shift. That's the turn. That's where the game begins again. But this time, you're not playing to be chosen. You're playing to be missed. Indifference is not emptiness. It is not numbness. It is not some accidental lack of feeling. Indifference is a weapon, a conscious decision to withhold the one thing most people are addicted to: your attention. To Machiavelli, indifference was not apathy. It was strategy, a deliberate masking of internal thought, a refusal to give others the satisfaction of knowing how much you care, how much you want, how much you're willing to give. Because when they know, they control you. In modern attraction, nothing breaks the spell like availability. The moment you show your hand, the game ends. And what most people call honesty in relationships, Machiavelli would call a strategic failure. He wrote, "A wise man ought always to follow the paths beaten by great men, and to imitate those who have been supreme. But the supreme are rarely accessible, and never desperate." Indifference is not the absence of desire. It is desire without disclosure. It is feeling something and choosing not to act, choosing stillness over chasing, choosing posture over performance. It is the cold fire behind your eyes that says, I am willing to lose you if it means keeping myself. This is where real power begins, because the modern world teaches you to respond to every message, every gesture, every withdrawal with anxious over clarity. But Machiavelli believed that the one who reacts first is already beneath the one who waited. Indifference is about emotional discipline. It's the choice to maintain stillness even as your mind screams for contact. It's not ghosting, it's not punishment, it's containment. You no longer giving your attention to see if it's returned. You're measuring who notices your absence, because absence in the hands of the powerful becomes presence. Louder, stronger, undeniable when you're indifferent. You stop offering closure. You stop offering explanations. You stop filling silence just to be understood. You let the silence do the damage for you. Machiavelli believed silence was often louder than action, because silence forces the other person to confront themselves, their own behavior, their own weakness, their own fear of losing you, and in that vacuum, they hear everything. You no longer say. The truth is, you don't need to be cold to master indifference. You need to be calculated. You need to understand that attraction is not about effort, it's about space. People desire what they can't fully read, what they can't fully possess. What makes them question their worth just enough to stay intrigued? You've tried the other way. You've over-explained, overreached. You've poured out affection hoping it would be mirrored, and all it gave you was emptiness. So now the strategy shifts from pursuit to observation, from proving to withholding, from flooding them with emotion to leaving them thirsty. Indifference creates psychological scarcity, the sense that your presence is rare, your interest earned, your love not a given but a privilege. When you embody indifference, you no longer fear walking away. You become the rare person who does not need to be chosen. You are already complete. Machiavelli would say, the vulgar crowd always is taken by appearances, and the world consists chiefly of the vulgar. So give them the appearance of distance, of unavailability, of quiet confidence. Let your indifference spark their insecurity. Let your calm unsettle their chaos. Let your cold fire burn without smoke felt, but not seen. This isn't about being mean, it's about being unavailable on purpose. Not emotionally dead, but emotionally precise. You don't show up just because they called. You don't explain just because they questioned. You don't react just because they disappeared. You wait, and in that waiting, you reclaim something most people have lost in the chase: dignity, self-possession, mystery. The ones who keep their power don't play every hand. They fold in silence. They vanish mid-scene. They don't beg to be understood. They create distance that demands interpretation. That is the fire you must master. The one that does not burn in rage but smolders in restraints. So when they pull away, you don't chase. When they test you, you don't flinch. When they try to confuse you, you stay still like a storm on the horizon, because the moment you prove that you need nothing from them is the moment they question if they were ever enough for you. That's the shift. Indifference is not detachment, it's power. Perfectly contained, cold, quiet, calculated, a fire with no smoke, but impossible to ignore. Power is not always loud. Sometimes it's the door that doesn't open. Sometimes it's the eye that doesn't flinch. Sometimes it's the silence that never breaks. Even when begged, Machiavelli understood this. He knew that a prince's greatest weapon was not his sword, but his fortress, not because it protected him from others, but because it separated him from need. in a world obsessed with instant access and emotional exposure. Your greatest act of rebellion is to become private, to become unreachable, to build the emotional fortress within, and then lock the gate. We live in a time where everyone wants entry. Entry into your thoughts, your past, your softness, your solitude. But Machiavelli would warn you, it is double pleasure to deceive the deceiver. And when you make yourself emotionally available to everyone, you invite deceivers to your table. You become a house with no walls, a throne without a guard, and worst of all, a ruler who has no control over his own gates. This section is your turning point, the end of your openness, the beginning of your reconstruction. You no longer offer access. You demand qualification, because here's the cold truth. People value what they must earn. No one treasures what is given freely. They may enjoy it, use it, but they don't respect it, and without respect, attraction becomes pity, affection becomes routine, connection becomes weightless. Your new law is simple. Build the fortress, then lock the gate. That fortress is made from your habits, your solitude, your daily rituals, the discipline of not replying immediately, the strength to say no without guilt, the poise to remain mysterious in a world begging you to overshadow. Machiavelli. Strength wasn't just in war, it was in withholding, in creating environments that forced others to behave with intent around you. You must now become a controlled environment, a fortress where not everyone is invited, where access is earned, where your presence is a privilege, not a product, because when everyone can reach you, no one values you. But when you disappear behind walls, when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, they start to feel your silence in their bones. Your fortress isn't to hide, it's to filter. It's to protect you from the emotional intruders, the ones who love to open doors only to walk away, the ones who drain you, confuse you, lower you. You have let too many in you. They allowed your emotional home to become a marketplace where you perform for scraps of attention, where your peace is auctioned off to people who never earned it. That ends now. Machiavelli believed that wise ruler was feared for his distance, not loved for his closeness, not because he was cruel, but because he understood that space creates structure. If you want to be treated like a throne, you must stop sitting on the floor. This doesn't mean isolation, it means selectivity. You stop responding to low-effort attention. You stop giving energy to people who haven't earned your story. You stop letting anyone with a smile become a guest in your kingdom. You are no longer a hallway with open doors. You are a castle with guarded towers, and those who enter, they enter with reverence or not at all. Let them call you cold. Let them say you've changed. Let them stand outside the gates wondering why the light no longer shines through. That silence is not rejection. It's calibration. It's the sound of you reclaiming your value, and as you reinforce your walls, something changes inside you. You stop feeling anxious when someone pulls away. You stop chasing closure. You stop fearing solitude. Because the fortress becomes enough, you become the source of your own approval, your own peace, your own clarity. You are no longer asking, will they stay? You are now asking, do they even deserve the key? Machiavelli would have smiled at that question, because to him, power was never about control over others. It was control over self, the ability to withdraw, to restrain, to protect your kingdom. Even when desire tempts you to open the gate, that is discipline, and discipline is rare, which is why it's feared, which is why it's respected. which is why it works from this day forward. You are no longer in the business of being understood by everyone. You are no longer available on demand, no longer proving your softness, no longer performing for validation. You are the fortress, silent, strong, undefinable, and those who seek entry, let them earn their place. Let them climb the walls. Let them bleed for the key, because once you build the fortress and lock the gate, you stop being the chase and become the reward. Charm is not a personality. It's a mask, a weapon, a calculated distortion of light, wielded to reflect what others want to see, while never revealing what lies behind the eyes. Machiavelli understood this with terrifying clarity. He wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are, and yet, the modern world has convinced you that authenticity means exposure, that honesty means transparency, that if you want to be loved, you must present your soul raw, open, vulnerable." But Machiavelli would never kneel to such sentiment. He knew that in matters of power, especially romantic power, the truth is not sacred. It is strategic. Charm, then, is the illusion of truth, a weaponized softness, a calculated gesture, not to connect but to disarm. This section is your shift from emotional performer to silent puppeteer, from reactive to unreadable, from soft-hearted pleaser to the sovereign who knows when to wear a smile and when to draw the blade beneath it. Because here's the brutal paradox. People say they want honesty, but what they respond to is mystery. They say they value vulnerability, but what they chase is restraint. Charm is how you thread that paradox. You give them enough warmth to feel safe, but never enough truth to feel certain. You become the mirror. You show them who they want to be in your presence. You reflect their fantasy back at them, then vanish before they touch the glass. To Machiavelli, this wasn't cruelty, it was control. Charm allows you to enter without resistance. It earns you trust without confession. It lowers their guard while keeping yours fully armed. But most importantly, charm buys you time. Time to observe, to assess, to discover who they really are while they're still trying to impress you. You wear the mask so you can study their face. You speak in suggestion, not confession. You offer warmth like wine, measured, refined, never poured freely. Charm, when used by the weak, is flattery, but when used by the powerful, it's bait. And bait only works when it seems innocent. Machiavelli would never reveal the full strategy. He would hint, smile, vanish. Let them wonder what he really meant. Let them project their hopes onto silence, because the most effective charm isn't what you say, it's what they imagine you meant. Your power lies in ambiguity. Do not explain. Do not define. Do not offer them the full blueprint of your soul. Offer the sketch. Let them color it in, because the more they invest in defining you, the more they become attached to the illusion they've created. And when someone falls in love with an illusion, they fear losing it even more than they ever feared losing you. That is charm. Machiavellian style. Seduction through suggestion. Power through perception. Mystery as leverage. The mistake most people make is believing charm is weakness. That to smile, to compliment, to disarm is to kneel. But no true charm comes from sovereignty. You're not trying to win them. You're letting them try to figure you out. You control how much they see, how much they feel, how close they think they're getting. And when the time comes when their expectations grow too loud, too demanding, too entitled, you show them what the mask was hiding. You show them the blade, not in cruelty, not in violence, but in withdrawal, in refusal, in perfect silence. Because once the mask is no longer needed, you don't beg to be kept, you simply leave. That is the moment they realize they never really knew you, and that terror, the void of unknowing, is often more powerful than any attachment you could have built with transparency. Machiavelli would have smiled at that. He understood that in a world where most people scream for attention, the person they can't fully read becomes the person they can't forget. So put on the mask, smile when necessary, be warm when it serves your position. Be generous in energy, but never in access. Let them chase the version of you they imagined. Let them taste certainty, but never hold it, because behind the mask of charm is the one thing they can never possess, the blade you never had to show. Silence isn't a pause, it's a message, and when deployed with precision, it's a psychological weapon more devastating than rage, more disorienting than closure. No contact is not ghosting, it's not immaturity, it's not avoidance, it's warfare. To Machiavelli, retreat was not surrender, it was strategy. He wrote, "It is better to act and repent than not to act and regret." But acting for him didn't always mean motion. Sometimes action is an action, sometimes the most violent strike is the one you refuse to make. This is the moment in the game where you remove your presence surgically, calmly, completely, not out of anger, not to provoke a reaction, but to restore your control. No contact isn't about getting them back. It's about getting yourself back. It is the execution of one brutal truth. You don't need to say goodbye. You just stop showing up, because every moment you stay in proximity to someone who undervalues you, your worth silently erodes. Every text they ignore, every breadcrumb they offer, every hot and cold cycle they run, it all feeds one conclusion. They control the narrative. No contact severs that control. It says, "You no longer have access to me, not my thoughts, my energy, my attention, or my pain." It forces a shift from pursuit to absence, from dialogue to echo, and the echo is louder than your voice ever was, because when someone who once needed your validation suddenly feels nothing, when someone who once toyed with your emotions is met with a wall instead of a response, they don't just notice, they obsess. To Machiavelli, emotional chaos was a ruler's greatest vulnerability. That's why he taught detachment, not as an escape, but as a fortress. He who is highly esteemed is not easily conspired against. He wrote, and there is nothing more magnetic, more haunting, than a person who simply vanishes, without justification, without drama, without noise. When you go no contact, you're not begging for attention, you're forcing recognition. You're showing that your presence was never free, because silence does what words never could. It makes them face themselves, the truth. Most people don't miss you. They miss what they got from you: your attention, your effort, your emotional labor, your availability. And when that disappears, when the faucet turns off completely, the panic begins. But here's the hard part. You must endure that panic too. You must sit in the withdrawal without flinching, because the moment you break no contact to check in, to explain, to clarify, you surrender the high ground. And Machiavelli never gave up ground once it was seized. He understood this. Those who lose you must feel the silence, not just hear it. It must echo in their routines, in their unchecked notifications, in their sudden awareness of your absence from their world. You become a ghost with weight, a shadow with gravity. Not because you're haunting them, but because you're no longer feeding the illusion that they could mistreat you and keep you. No contact is the psychological reversal, the collapse of their ego's illusion that you'll always be there. But let's be clear, this is not a trick. It's not a tactic to win someone back. It's a line in the sand. You go no contact. Because your dignity demands it. Because every time you explain your worth to someone who already showed they don't care, you lower your crown, and you were not made to beg. You were made to exit. Quietly, strategically, irrevocably, because the one who walks away without warning is remembered far longer than the one who stayed pleading. Machiavelli believed fear was more reliable than love. And while we may not live by fear, we must understand that the discomfort of our absence teaches others to value our presence. No contact teaches them something nothing else can. You were not a free resource, you were a privilege they lost. So if you're waiting to be appreciated, stop. If you're trying to get closure, stop. If you think just one more message will change their mind, stop. Your silence is the final act, and it says everything. It says, you will no longer tolerate confusion. You will no longer reward inconsistency. You will no longer exist in places where you are only partially wanted, and most importantly, you don't need them to understand. You just need them to notice when the noise stops. That's when the power transfers, and that's when the game finally belongs to you. You've been told to become better so that someone will choose you, but Machiavelli would laugh at that idea. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles, he wrote, and in the world of attraction, the same applies. It is not their attention that gives you value, it's your value that makes them desperate for your attention. Becoming the prize isn't about arrogance, it's about sovereignty. This is the final evolution, not chasing, not reacting, not explaining, but embodying. Becoming the thing they thought they could take for granted, and then vanishing before they ever understood your full worth. You see, when you were chasing them, offering more, proving yourself, you were unknowingly reinforcing one dangerous illusion that they were the prize, and you were the applicant. But Machiavelli knew better. He understood that those who seem most available are valued least, and those who remove themselves from the market become unforgettable. The modern dating world is designed to breed insecurity. You're encouraged to stay in the mix, to compete, to prove, to fight for relevance. But when you withdraw from the noise, when you no longer seek to be chosen, you become scarce, and scarcity creates obsession. The moment you stop auditioning, the audience leans forward. Becoming the prize is not about external validation. It's an internal shift. It means knowing that your time is valuable, that your presence is expensive, that your peace cannot be purchased through charm or proximity. It means walking into every interaction with a simple, silent premise. I don't need you to like me. I only need to see if you qualify to stay. And once you truly believe that, your entire presence changes. You speak less, you reveal less, you ask fewer questions and watch more closely. You stop trying to win anyone, because you understand that you are the win. And when they sense that shift, they feel it, not in what you say, but in what you withhold. To Machiavelli, this kind of positioning was the highest form of influence. He would have said, make yourself feared in absence, not loved in presence. Let them feel the weight of your silence more than the pleasure of your companies. Oh, how do you become the prize? You stop being emotionally available to people who offer uncertainty. You stop offering explanations to people who weaponize your words. You stop leaking your light into people who only stay when it's convenient for them. You choose discipline over impulse, mystery over disclosure, exit over justification. You become expensive not in ego, but in standards. You do not respond to breadcrumbs. You do not argue with disrespect. You do not accept half love with full effort, because becoming the prize also means learning to vanish not as a punishment, but as a principle. You don't announce your departure. You don't give one final speech. You don't tell them what they lost. You show them in the emptiness, in the silence, in the space they thought they could always fill with your presence, and that void becomes your signature. That absence becomes your echo, because people remember what they can't replace. They remember the one who didn't fight to stay. They remember the silence that followed what they once dismissed. Machiavelli believed that fear creates stability, and while you need not inspire fear, you must leave them unsettled and settled by how gracefully you disappeared, by how whole you are without them, by how they underestimated you and now can't find the door back in because there is no door back in. You closed it the moment you chose yourself over explanation. You locked it the moment you realized your worth wasn't up for debate, and you walked away not to prove a point, but to return to your throne. Now they see what they missed, not just you, but the version of you that was available. That version no longer exists, because becoming the prize is not a performance. It's a retreat into self-mastery. It is no longer wondering why they pulled away. It's realizing you've gone somewhere they can no longer reach, and they'll try, they'll breadcrumb, they'll test the waters, they'll pretend nothing happened, but they'll feel it in your tone if you respond at all. They'll feel it in your poise, your distance, your silence. The storm has passed, and all that's left is the air they can't breathe without you. That is the power of becoming the prize, and then vanishing, not to be chased, but to be remembered silently, permanently, strategically. You began this journey chasing validation, chasing people, chasing answers. But Machiavelli would have warned you from the start. He who seeks approval lowers his crown before his throne is built. And now, your crown has been reforget. This was never about revenge, never about playing games. It was about recalibration, about remembering who you are when no one's watching, about withdrawing not in weakness, but in wartime. Strategy, because silence is not emptiness, it is presence. Concentrated, you no longer explain your worth. You no longer wait for a reply. You no longer offer your peace to people addicted to chaos. Let them talk. Let them wonder. Let them craft stories in the vacuum you left behind. But you stay still, cold, controlled, composed. You have now become something very few ever master. Untouchable, not because you ran faster, but because you simply stopped playing the game. This is not a phase. This is your standard now. No more chasing, no more pleasing, no more leaking power into hands that never knew how to hold it. Let them feel the absence. Let them taste the silence. And when they try to return, when they reach for the version of you that used to answer, used to explain, used to wait, let them find the gate closed, reposition, reframe, withdraw. That's the game now, Machiavelli would say. Now, they know not to cross you.